I'm pacing back and forth, and the suspect, he's laying on his back, and his head was tilted in my direction. His head never moved, but he was tracking me back and forth with his eyes. His eyes were moving back and forth, and then he just died right in front of all of us, and that was my first officer-involved shooting around.
Welcome to the Cops and Riders Podcast. Your host, Sergeant Patrick O'Donnell, worked the streets in one of the nation's largest police departments for over 25 years. Ride along with O'Donnell and his expert guests as they help you navigate the oftentimes confusing and misunderstood world of law enforcement. O'Donnell and his guests on this show do not represent any law enforcement agency. The content of this show is not meant to be legal advice. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do.
Hey, Cops and Writers, thanks for being here with us today for another episode of the Cops and Writers Podcast. I'm Patrick O'Donnell, and I'll be your host for today's show. This show is listener-supported, so thanks to all of you who keep the show going. I would especially like to thank those of you who are patrons of the show. Your generosity helps pay for the software, equipment, and my time producing this show. Yes, you too can become a patron for less than a cup of coffee or a pint of Guinness. Just go over to patreon.com/Cops and Writers. Welcome, everyone, to part one of one of the most dramatic and impactful stories I've ever encountered since I started this podcast with Police Officer Michael Martinez of the San Diego Police Department. The conclusion of this interview will air next Sunday. A little bit about Mike. Michael Martinez has been a police officer with the San Diego Police Department for about 10 years. After phase training, he was assigned to Southern Division, where he had the opportunity to work with a variety of assignments, including patrol, acting detective, and field training officer. Officer Martinez was involved in 4 officer-involved shootings, the first 3 within his first 18 months after field training. He took advantage of a career and life-changing opportunity that was offered to him by the San Diego Police Department's Wellness Unit. He was diagnosed with PTSD and now shares his story with fellow law enforcement officers. He is currently a member of the department's OIS peer support team and is currently assigned to the department's wellness unit. Officer Martinez has received numerous awards and commendations, including a Medal for Valor. He truly believes his assignment in his calling to help others who are struggling in silence. His goal is to break the stigma of seeking and receiving help within the first responder profession and to be a resource to officers and their families. Mike is about as genuine as they get. I admire his honesty and willingness to help other cops that have gone through the trauma of being in an OIS. Please enjoy this frank and powerful interview with Police Officer Mike Martinez. Mike Martinez, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, first off, I have to thank you for your openness and honesty, with the subject matter. Sometimes people, and understandably, don't really want to talk about things like this that are so traumatic to you, your family, and everything else. I just have to say thank you. That's huge of you to be willing to share all this with everyone. And my genuine wish is that whoever is listening to this, especially if you've been through a tough patch or if you've been through a critical incident, if you're law enforcement or a first responder, maybe this will help somewhat. And Mike, again, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
And then, of course, as we're talking about thank yous here, I have to thank Steve Murphy over at the Game of Crimes podcast for the intro. I love Steve Murphy. He's got a great podcast over there. And he is genuinely one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. I had the pleasure of having lunch with him and my buddy Rich Rybecki, who is a retired Chicago PD detective lieutenant, about a week ago. I was in Florida. Nice. So it's always great to see those guys. And, it was great to see, Steve. And he has given me so many good guests through the years. That's the thing about podcasting. And it's the author community, too. We're not in, competition with each other. We try to help each other. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, Steve Murphy is a awesome guy. I was on his podcast, and this is probably over maybe 2 years ago now, I think, if my time is correct, or my memory is correct. I think it was about 2 years ago. I was on his podcast, and I've chatted with him over the years at conferences or at the Southern California Gang Conference. He comes down every year, and I just recently, I think I hit him up maybe, I don't know, three months ago when I had some business questions because I'm starting to get a kind of a business, doing these presentations nationwide now at different
Sure.
conferences. And as soon as I started thinking about that, I was like, man, he's the first guy I got to hit up, and humble guy, help me out, help answer some questions. And I'm not a businessman. I'm just a regular cop. So
That's what
all
most
this,
of us are, right? It's like, I'm talking to Steve, he's got a great book out, him and Javier, about, taking down Pablo Escobar. And I never would have thought I'd be an author. And then all of a sudden now he is, got this great podcast. He said, I never would have thought I'd be like a podcaster, and we're all a bunch of dumb cops. We don't know, all this tech stuff, but you know what? You figure it out as
exactly.
you go along.
Right.
All right. So again, thank you, Steve. All right.
Yep.
So, Mike, your first 2 years on the job, you were involved in 4 shootings. I mean, that's extraordinarily is extraordinary. Do you ever think, what the hell?
Um, yes. So, kind of to correct, and I know a lot of times people think it was 4 shootings in 2 years. So it was actually three officer involved shootings within 18 months. Right out of phase training, and then 19. So about 2.5 years later, or 2 years later, actually, I was involved in my fourth one.
Okay.
So so that yeah, so it was three officer involved shootings in 18 months, and then 2 years later, I was involved in my fourth one. But yeah, in the moment, I know today that, now looking back, I know that it's rare. Does it happen to other officers throughout the nation? Absolutely. I've met people who have been in, 5, 6, 7, 8 officer involved shootings. But I think we are rare. Just one officer involved shooting itself in a law enforcement officer's career is absolutely rare,
Yeah, I
regardless of
think it's like
how it
it's hard to get the numbers, but I believe it's like 80 to 87% of the cops never, discharge their firearm. And
Yes,
then there's studies that say, well, they discharge their firearm. Well, it's not counting like taking down a deer that was, like hitting traffic, or a dog, or an accidental discharge, or I mean, there's other reasons why cops shoot their weapons.
right,
And for
exactly.
whatever reason, you go to Google and it's not clear cut. And I would think by now somebody would have probably done some extensive research on this, but it's probably the answers that the public doesn't want to hear and doesn't sell advertising and whatever, it's just, but you know what? We'll get back to that. I promise you.
All
But
right.
let's go back in time a little bit. Your background, you know, any family or friends in law enforcement? What's the craziest thing you saw when you were a cop? My first week on the job, a guy running at me with a butcher knife. He just killed his brother over the last hot dog. That's chapter 1. There are 33 more. Police Stories, the rookie years, just launched. Available now on Amazon. Search Police Stories Patrick O'Donnell or click the link in the show notes. Back to the show.
No. So I have a cousin who's a correctional officer. He worked corrections for years. But no, I'm the only first responder in my family.
Wow.
So it was uh, definitely a unique, kind of unique experience for me and my family.
Yeah. Now, when you told your mom or your dad, hey, I'm going to be a cop, what did they say?
They were supportive. They
Okay.
were supportive when I first told them that I was going to be a cop. I told them in college I was going to try to apply, and when I went to, growing up, we could backtrack a little bit. Growing up, I wasn't the best kid growing up. I got involved in the street life. I have family on both, family members on both sides of my mom and dad side who are gang related,
Mm,
narcotic. is narcotic use, substance abuse runs in the family. So growing up as a young kid, seeing that, it was I bought into it. I bought into it, that lifestyle. I wanted to be that gangster with the nice clothes, with the money,
Sure.
with the chicks all the time.
Yeah,
Always
yeah.
had the cute friends, right? Um, when you're young, you don't see the negative of that type of lifestyle. You don't
No, it's
see
you live in the moment, right? I mean, you don't see
living
any
the high
old
life.
drug dealers, yeah.
Yep,
Unless they're like way up on the food chain,
right.
the street level. No. So you grew up in San Diego. What were the gangs there back then, and are they still around?
Oh, they're still around. I mean, these the gangs here, especially the Hispanic gangs, the Mexican gangs. I mean, they're it's generational. I mean, they've been around since my mom and dad were young. So these neighborhoods, they don't change. The generations of
So was it
um,
like Bloods and Crips like you see on TV, or what was
So
it?
yeah, so here in San Diego County, we have everything. We have your white gangs, we have your Asian gangs, you have your black gangs, Latino gangs, and the only thing we don't have here in San Diego is norteños. We don't have any of the Northerners, the
Mm,
Mexicans that wear the red bandanas. They
yeah.
wave, they fly the red colors. We don't have any of that. That's all in like Northern California or like Central California. So we don't Los Angeles, San Diego, all of Southern California. We don't. I've only seen one norteño in my entire career, and I wanted to get away from him because I was like, man, that's an automatic green light. Somebody's
Yeah.
going to shoot your ass, and I have you here on a traffic stop. I was like, get the fuck out of here! Don't get me killed.
So,
So
you know, in Milwaukee, it was, the black gangs were mostly gangster disciples, GDs, and
okay,
vice lords. Those were like the big ones. Then the Latin gangs were Mexican Posse, Latin Kings, Spanish Cobras. Those were like the big ones. And there wasn't a lot of Asian influence. We had Asian Crips, ACs.
okay.
So did you have, is it called different stuff over by you, I imagine, or?
Yeah, so out here, obviously, we have you have your blood and crypt, your different sets, Pyru, the Hispanic gangs. Again, it's the Sureños, it's the Southerners.
Mm.
The Asian gangs, I can't even think of some of the Asian gangs off the top of my head. But then you even have your like out in Oceanside, California, which is here in San Diego County. You have your Samoan
Oh,
gangs, you
okay.
have your
Yeah, yeah.
Polynesian. So we have a little bit. I mean, we have a lot of everything, and then it's San Diego, so you have your visitors coming from all over the world.
Sure.
People come from Las Vegas, and they come from the East Coast, and during COVID was an interesting time because the border was shut down for I think about a week, right?
Yeah.
All the port of entries were shut down, so you'd get these like guys coming from Louisiana and Alabama with their license plate down in San Isidro,
Yeah.
and you're like, what is an Alabama vehicle doing down here in San
Right.
Isidro? Everybody was coming to pick up their dope. So
Uh,
San Diego, especially the city of San Diego, for people who are interested in a law enforcement career where you could get into a lot and get a lot of experience. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a San Diego PD officer, but the city of San Diego PD, you will have an opportunity to kind of see it all. Familiarize yourself with all types of gangs and different cultures too. Different neighborhoods and different cultures. I mean, we have everything Vietnamese and Chinese. Obviously San Diego County has Samoan and everything. So it's a interesting place to live, and it's an interesting place to work.
Quite a melting pot. I gotta say, San Diego is one of my favorite places to visit. The weather is incredible. It always feels like it's like 70 degrees or 75 degrees, and
Yes.
it's a beautiful, I mean, it's been years since I've been there, but what struck me was, I'm from Chicago, and then, I moved to Milwaukee, and I was surprised by how clean the city was for being a, quote unquote big city. I'm like, I felt pretty safe walking around there too, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that San Diego, the city of San Diego, prides itself on is they say that we are the safest big city in the nation. I think that's kind of like their
Okay.
the name for the city. It's the safest big city in the nation.
Yeah, I like I said before, I absolutely love visiting there. It's been too long, so next time I go, maybe you can show me around.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll give you the grand tour.
Ooh, there we go. Absolutely love that. So, like we said, you grew up in San Diego. How do you describe your early years and your high school years?
I got into a lot of trouble. Got into a lot of trouble in from elementary, middle school. Ended up having to switch high schools, and my parents put me into a private Catholic high school.
I went to
Um,
Catholic grade school, so yeah,
yeah.
they
So
don't mess they don't mess around, brother.
no, they don't. Yeah, they don't. And I even got in trouble there. I got in trouble at at the Catholic high school, getting into fights. But a lot of it was it was fights. It was I was trying to be, I was trying to be that gangster, trying to prove myself, our ego, right?
Sure.
As a teenage kid growing up like that. Um, just dumb decisions that I made, but I eventually I made it out of the neighborhood, and made it out of San Diego, and I went to college.
So when you were in high school, where did you see yourself going? Like, say you're a senior and there's guidance counselors that are supposedly trying to help you figure out the next step. I mean, where did you see yourself in a few years?
I didn't have a plan.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. Um, my plan was to just get a part-time job after graduating high school, and hang out like cousins and friends were doing.
Yeah.
And speaking of the counselor, that was a life-changing moment for me when my counselor at the Catholic high school, she pulled me to the side. She asked me, "Hey, what are your plans when you get out of high school? What do you plan on
Yeah.
doing?" And I told her that. I said, "I'm just going to kick it on the block. I'm going to hang out with the homies. I'm going to go get a part-time job." And she told me that my overall grades from public school, and then obviously into the private school, private high school, that my overall grades, that they were good enough where I may be able to get into a 4-year university. And I didn't know what a 4-year university even was. I didn't even know what that term was. And she gave me this book that had all the Catholic universities in the entire nation. I took that book home. I circled Hawaii because
Hell
I'm a San
yeah.
Diego boy. Yeah, I'm a San Diego boy, so I was like, I don't like cold weather, and let's see what this lady is really about. And next thing you know, she got the ball rolling, and I ended up getting accepted into Chaminade University of Honolulu, which is the Catholic university on Oahu.
Wow. So here you are, this kid in San Diego, and you're getting into fights, you're getting into mischief, et cetera, et cetera. And boom, off to Hawaii, which sounds like a dream come true to me,
Right.
as a
Yeah.
kid. I might get into even more trouble if I wind up going to an island like that, an island quote unquote paradise. But you know, you go to college. What did you declare a major right away, or did you have an idea?
Yes. So I wanted to do what she did for me. I wanted to become a counselor or a psychiatrist or a therapist. And my goal at the time was I wanted to work with at-risk teens.
Okay.
I wanted, I just remember thinking like, damn, she's changing. She's helping to change my life. Um, she gave me that opportunity, and I wanted to be able to do that for another kid who is going down the wrong path. So that was my goal at the time. Well, my my career goals ended up shifting once I started going to college. I was taking the psychology classes,
Mhm.
and some as you go on through the years, some of the psychology classes bleed into criminal justice classes.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I would take some of those classes, and I was working as a security officer at the Queens Medical Center. And I always say this is where I got bit by the law enforcement bug.
Okay.
That's where I was like, you know what? I think I want to be a cop. I don't know if I want to be therapist, but I ended up, long story short, I ended up graduating with a bachelor's of arts in psychology and a bachelor of science in criminal justice and criminology. So I dual majored, and
Mm,
yeah, that was at my goal at the time was to study psychology.
wow. See, c- I don't think four-year college is for everybody. And, I was on the fence. And what did it for me was I did an internship with the sheriff's department. And that sealed the deal. I started out as a music major. I was going to be a band director, for God's sakes. But you just get that fever, and it's like you get excited about it. So yeah, it's a really cool thing. And man, you're in Hawaii. That's just so cool. So you're a
Yeah.
security officer, and you said it was the Queens Medical Center.
Yes. So
What
it was the
what
Queens.
exactly is that?
So the Queens Medical Center of Honolulu, it serves as the state of Hawaii's trauma center.
Okay.
So it you have your medevacs coming from all over the other islands.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so it's the I would say it's the biggest hospital. I think it's the biggest hospital in the entire state of Hawaii.
Wow. So yeah, like diving accidents. Hopefully not too many shark attacks, but
Eh, You know what? I don't remember if I saw shark attacks, but you would see uh we saw like parachuting accidents,
ooh,
vehicle accidents, um, murders, drownings, kid drownings. People come on
oh shit.
vacation and their kids drown. I mean, there was a lot of everything. But security, we were security for the entire hospital, but where we were also at was in the emergency room.
Oh,
So when the traumas would come in, the trauma victims would come in, we would help cut their clothing off, take off their jewelry, impound it, impound their like cash and
sure.
money, weapons sometimes if they have it on them.
Yeah.
So we would do all that stuff, and we also worked in the psychiatric center,
Oh boy.
uh, and that's where I got bit by the law enforcement bug. Just the entire, fighting and like restraining patients and chasing them down the street when they would escape from the psychiatric area, breaking up fights at the hospital. I mean, domestic violence incidents that are going on in the hospital. I mean, just everything. People driving it to the hospital, running from somebody who's chasing them, or a husband who's chasing them in a vehicle or something. I mean, there was just all kinds of crazy shit. And I was like, man, I got bit by the law enforcement bug. I was like, holy crap! Like, I think I want to be a cop. I don't know if I want to work with at-risk teens anymore. And started tossing around the idea.
You probably had a chance to talk to some of the coppers that were coming in, and they'd
Oh,
tell you stories or whatever, and you're a young man, and you're like, man, that sounds kind of cool.
yes, yeah. And the Queens Medical Center. So the security staff that we had, a lot of them ended up applying to the Honolulu Police
Mm,
Department. They applied to the Big Island, Hawaii Police Department, Maui, and they got hired. So it felt almost like at the time Queens Medical Center was like a breeding ground for people that are transitioning over to the police department. Like
sure.
they were putting in their applications and they were getting hired. So I have a ton of friends at Honolulu PD now.
Well, the thing about it is, and I give kudos to anybody that's doing that job or corrections where you're not armed. The only weapon you have is your mouth. You everybody calls it, the cool thing is to call it de-escalation these days, but cops have been doing it forever. And when you're in that position, you're dealing with somebody who's emotionally disturbed and they're in some type of crisis or whatever, and you have very little training, but you either you click or you don't. And all of
Right.
a sudden you become really good at talking because it's no fun to fight with people all night. You're gonna get
No.
hurt, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, oh man, that hurt. Like, oh shit. It's like after a while you're just like, man, it's just not worth it. So I think I've worked with cops that have done those types of jobs, and they're much better than the 21-year-old kid that has zero life experience that's trying to de-escalate somebody or trying to, like cool somebody down, and they don't even know what to say. I mean, yeah, you go through training in the academy, all that happy stuff, but for you doing that, I would think that would be really valuable.
And one of the things that I think helped me as well is I'm a short guy. So being at working, like you said, working at the hospital with no weapons, just your mouth was
Yep.
your only weapon, your mouth and your fist, right?
Right.
Um, and you're talking to a Samoan or a Tongan or a Hawaiian guy, you know what I mean? And
Right.
they're 200-300 pounds, solid muscle, and you're trying to de-escalate a situation so you don't get the life beaten out of you. Please, sir.
Yes, you're looking up at
Turn
this
around so I can put these
towering
handcuffs on you.
Samoan. Yeah, that would be like that looks like a tree trunk more than anything else. It's like, oh boy, that could be. But you know what though? That's how you learn. You
How
get
you
thrown
learn.
into the deep end of the pool. So I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. One thing I forgot about that I wanted to ask you. I One of my cops went to high school and spent a bunch of years in Hawaii.
Okay.
And I said, "Boy, that must have been awesome." He says, "Not really." I said, "Why?" He said, "The locals did not appreciate that I was, from the mainland."
Oh yes, that's true. I wouldn't say all, but there is a thing out there. There is a thing out there about people from the mainland, and I think there's some truth. There's a little bit of truth to that because Hawaii it's an island. There's a culture there, right? And people
Right.
don't want that culture to change. When I remember when I first went, everything was slow. It was like when people talk about Hawaii time, it was literally Hawaii time. Like nobody was in a rush to go anywhere. But some of the things that you hear is like, people from the mainland, whether it's California or, New York or wherever they come from, they come and visit and everybody's in a rush and they don't know how to
Yeah.
drive. And people are speeding and there's some truth of like, hey, you people stay over there. You know what I mean? Like stay on the mainland, do your shit over there. Like don't come over here to the islands and ruin a good thing that we have over here. So there is some truth to what he's saying. Like they don't again, not everybody, but I think
Right.
they don't want their culture to be changed
Yeah,
by
yeah,
outsiders.
he went there when he was like a freshman in high school, and he thought they'd welcome him with open arms, and it was quite the opposite. He's like, "Oh, you're a
Yeah.
mainlander, huh?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize there was this animosity here, And I was in Hawaii years ago, my first honeymoon, and I was in Oahu, and I was shocked by the amount of prostitution. Oh my God. And
Yeah.
well, first off, I was shocked by there's a heavy Japanese influence. There's a ton of Japanese influence and tourists there. A lot of the restaurants, like the menus like in the window were in Japanese.
Right.
And
Yes.
you would have these Japanese businessmen and there would be the hookers going after them. You have these tall blondes, going after these Japanese guys, and I saw it all the time. Was that still going on there?
It's still going on. Right. It's still going on. And I go maybe like once a year. My wife is from Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so she'll go like once or twice a year and
Yeah,
uh it's take the kids and so that's usually a trip. But yeah, down in Waikiki,
yeah,
the prostitution is still going on. I haven't been to Waikiki and when I go back to visit, we don't go down into town.
okay.
So I haven't been there for a while, but the last time I was there, I would say maybe about 3 years ago. There's still there's still prostitution. Yeah, it's still
Yeah, it was like out in the open, but it was in Waikiki because our hotel was in Waikiki. And I just remember taking a walk at night, and I'm just clearing my head or whatever before I go to bed. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, okay.
it,
All right.
it,
Yeah.
it reminds me of like Las Vegas Strip back in like early 2000s
Mm,
when the prostitutes would be out there
yep.
on the street or they'd be inside the casino walking around. That's what it reminds me of that a lot.
Wow, that's funny. Yeah, I was not ready for that. I was kind of shocked a little bit. I was like, wow, this is like out in the open and everything, but okay, all right. So, what do you think, getting back to, working with emotionally disturbed people, violent people, you're a security officer at this hospital. What do you think about non-cops being first responders to calls dealing with, violent, especially emotionally ill people?
Yeah, that has become an idea. Like I think politics have
Oh,
gotten a hold of
big
that
time.
idea. And
Yep.
hey, instead of sending police to these mental health calls that are not violent when they come out, why don't we send these civilians who are trained in mental health? Uh, my personal opinion is I think it is a dumb idea.
Yep.
I think that the people that are coming up with these laws or these ideas have never themselves responded to a mental health situation that was not violent,
Right.
and
Yes.
they have never had the experience to see how a non-violent situation can turn absolutely violent in
In a blink
a
of an eye.
split second.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. There's no
it's
guarantee it's like you're gonna send, Jane or Joe Citizen that's, a psychiatric professional to this call as a first responder. And it's like I'm sure this, emotionally disturbed person is gonna be, gentle and docile with me and everything's gonna be honky dory. And it's like, no. Now I will say in Milwaukee, for years we called them different teams. One was for juveniles and one was for adults, where they were nurses at the mental health facility that we had in Milwaukee, and we could call them out. It was a mobile crisis team,
okay.
and there was the police. We would be the first ones to respond. So if you got somebody waving a knife around or a gun or whatever, obviously you don't want the you don't want the mental health person going, but you want the cop to be there first, and then you make the determination and then later and it's like, well, do we have enough to chapter them? Chapter 51 was our state mental health thing, for a 72-hour hold.
Okay.
It's like, okay, because as you well know, there is a plenty of gray area with that, and you're like, do I have enough? But do I want to leave this guy to his own
Right.
devices, and what's going to happen when that happens? And am I going to get fired? First off, you don't want to see anything bad happen, and second off, I don't want to get fired because I left and then he sliced up his kid, or he killed himself, or whatever. Now they're coming after you with both barrels.
Right. Yeah. That's in that we here at San Diego PD, we have psychiatric PERT officers. So we have they call them PERT, psychiatric emergency response team,
Yeah,
and you'll have a PERT officer that is riding in the vehicle with a police officer,
that's
and
great.
will
Yeah.
respond. Yeah, we'll respond to some of these. We call them 5150s. Your
Okay.
chapter 51, so psychiatric calls,
Hmm.
um, and we'll go out there and we'll have the PERT officer evaluate. Obviously, if it's a violent situation, the officer is good, has the opportunity to evaluate to make the scene safe for that PERT officer to
Correct.
conduct their evaluation of the suspect. But yeah, having a civilian go out to a non-emergency psychiatric call that can turn violent in an instant, and then we're getting called again anyway. And
Yeah.
now instead of one of us going, now there's three or four of us going
Right.
because someone's getting attacked, severely beaten,
Right.
whatever it may be. So it's
It
I don't agree with that at all.
it's just pandering for votes, big bad police, blah blah blah, and then it's politicians that have never done anything remotely close to the job of being a cop or actually being on the street where dealing with this kind of stuff. It's fantasy and make believe, and people buy into it because in theory it sounds great. And the cops will be like, "Yeah, good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then don't call me when things turn to shit." Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So,
Or they'll be on the news and say, "Hey, look, the politician will say, "Hey, I'm right here talking to I responded to this mental health call," and
right.
the cameras don't show the 15 bodyguards that he has
Oh,
behind him,
absolutely. That are,
and
man, I could go on a rant and I won't, but it's like all these anti-gun, like politicians that are guarded by a small army of people with guns. I'm like, really? You are such a hypocrite. Oh my God. But anyways, that's another rabbit hole. You know, my biggest question was when I was doing my research on you, why not be a cop in Hawaii? That sounds awesome.
yeah, so I did. I applied. So
Oh,
I applied for tons of agencies, but again, the way that I grew up, when I did my PHQ or my PHS, I put everything down on paper. I was very honest, and so everything, right? Like all the crimes that you've ever committed, all the drug use, crimes that you've committed that you've never been caught for, um,
Oh, see, they didn't
everything.
ask me
So
that. They didn't ask me that.
yeah, so I put everything down on paper. So Honolulu PD, Maui PD, disqualified me. I applied
Oh,
for um, I started to apply for agencies back in 2009, and I didn't get hired with San Diego PD until 2016. So 9 years after the fact, I mean, I got disqualified from everywhere, from San Diego PD, San Diego Sheriffs, Long Beach Police Department. I applied for agencies in Arizona. I think like um, Maricopa County Sheriff's
mm.
Department, Mesa PD. I applied everywhere, but I just kept getting disqualified,
Oh,
and so yeah, Honolulu. Finally in 2016, San Diego PD finally gave me a shot, but they had disqualified me, I believe, 3 times. So they disqualify you for I don't remember, like 3 years, 2 years,
yeah, you can
1 year.
reapply. Yeah.
You keep reapplying, and
Mhm.
and as that time frame became smaller and smaller in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I got a shot. I got in the sheriff's department, also San Diego Sheriff's Department. They did the same thing. They gave me a 3 year, like, you cannot apply for the next 3 years. And the next time I applied, they disqualified me and they said, hey, you can't apply for 2 years. And it got smaller and smaller. The windows got smaller and smaller. So I finally got hired in 2016.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's I did backgrounds for a very brief moment where my job was to go through applicants, packets, and we had a
Okay.
point system. And it's like, okay, like arrested for a misdemeanor. Obviously, if it was domestic violence, then it was an automatic no. But just like say shoplifting or driving stuff or whatever the case may be, and the more time that separated you from those offenses, the points went down.
Okay.
So that's part of the deal. It's like, okay, this guy made some mistakes when he was young, but now he's a little bit older. Now, if you continue to make those mistakes, well, then there's nothing we can do for you, But you're not dumbass kids. There's a reason because you're a kid. You do stupid shit. But as an adult, well, don't be a stupid adult. That's what it boils down to. So glad you made it. And your first job moving back to San Diego was working with animal control. I love that.
Yes.
What were some interesting or funny assignments regarding that?
So that was, you know what? To be honest, I loved working animal control. I never worked with animals. Obviously, prior to that, I had no experience going into it. The only reason I applied for that position because I knew that it was somewhat law enforcement. It's somewhere in the first
Yeah,
responder world,
absolutely.
and yeah. So I was working corrections in Hawaii. I got picked up with state corrections, working at the youth correctional facility. I did that for about 2 years, and then I decided to move back to San Diego. I picked up the job with animal control, and I believe at that time San Diego PD and the San Diego Sheriff's Department, they had disqualified me around that time, and they told me, "Hey, you can reapply in a year." And so I was like, "I need to get first of all, I need to get a job. I can't just
Yeah,
move
you
to
got to
San
pay the
Diego
bills. Yeah.
to pay the bills." And I wanted, this is a job to kind of get my foot into the door, rubbing elbows with other law enforcement agencies, and because you get called out to different
Oh,
calls, and so that was my idea behind it, but I absolutely loved it. I love the freedom that we had. There wasn't anybody looking over our shoulder constantly. There was just a lot more freedom to do things, and we did good work. I like working with the people and the different animals that I got to work with, cats and dogs and uh, um, horses and pigs and llamas
horses,
and yeah,
llamas,
we
and
did.
horses.
We did it all, yeah, to make sure that we would go and check ranches when we would get tipped off, or
Oh,
somebody would make a complaint like, hey, my next door neighbor owns 3 horses and they don't feed them and they're skin and bones, and
oh,
you go out there and you have to, give them an opportunity to correct whatever needs to be done. But yeah, it was awesome. The investigations that we did for like the chicken fighting, the cockfighting that would,
Oh, wow.
go
Okay.
on over here. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. It was pretty cool. Interesting.
I didn't think that actually happened. I thought that was just in the movies until I got transferred to the South Side, which was primarily Hispanic. And it's
Okay.
like, yeah, Sarge, we broke up a I'm like, you did not. And here they're bringing in like the little spurs, and I'm just like,
Yes.
this actually happens. And like the nose thing that they put on the rooster, and I'm just like, holy shit, I didn't know this was real.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the little like they put a little um kind of like to cover their eyes
Oh yeah, like a
while
mask or
they're in. Yeah, like a little mask so they can't see anything for like a couple of days before the fight. And then
oh
when they do take it off, there's just another rooster right in front of them, and they just, they go at it. Everything, yeah, all the spurs and
yeah.
the medication that they will give to like
Oh,
inject the rooster with more adrenaline so they could
that's
continue
so
the fight.
horrible. Oh my God.
Yeah,
That
all
and
the dope and the cash that's involved
oh
in some of these.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's huge. Yeah.
That and dogfights, that was primarily in the black neighborhoods that I worked in.
I never got to see anything like that.
Oh,
No.
it is disgusting. Oh, Michael Vick, rotten hell. I'm sorry, but it just once you've seen the aftermath, because we would get called, it's like the dog in the alley chained to like a light pole. There'd be a pit bull back there. And obviously he was in, they're like when I was newer, they're and the guys that were there for a while, they're like, yeah, there's dog fights in this house, or there's dog
Oh,
fights in this neighborhood, and it's like this is the loser. We'd have to call animal control and it'd have to be put down.
so they would leave them out there
Yeah.
to die, basically,
Yes.
right? Because they're all
Yeah.
messed up. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, just that might, and I'm a huge dog guy, and it just, oh God, my heart would just break every time I saw that. It's like I've seen a zillion dead bodies, and I'm like, yeah, but I'd
I
see a poor dog, and I'm like, oh no, it's like, God. Any like exotic animals that you dealt with? I mean, llamas, that's kind of cool. I never would have thought that from San Diego.
Yeah, I had and again, I don't get to talk about this incident too much. I've only talked about it one other time, but it was there was fires out here in East County, San Diego, and I had a ride along with me that day. She was like a news reporter. I forget what
Mm,
channel she was with,
yeah.
but we she does a ride along with me because we were first responders, so we getting called to like, hey, you need to take these horses or take all these chickens or whatever from this property because it's going to get burnt.
Ooh, yeah.
And so she was riding with me, and we go to we're on this road, and fire was coming the opposite direction, and they flagged me down and they told me, hey, right when you make this bend, there's going to be an emu. There's an emu that's completely burnt,
Oh
and
no.
it's walking right in the middle of the road. So I said, okay. So I make that turn, and sure enough, I saw the emu, and it was all fucked up. Like its feathers were all melted. It was like charred, and it was still walking, and it kind of walks off the road, and I go over there to try to capture it because my plan was to not burn it, but to put it down
I
because it
hope
was all
not.
burnt. Burn
Yeah,
it and
you're
eat
burnt
it. I was
now.
gonna
I
burn
think
it
I'll
and
burn
eat
you a
it.
little bit more. I don't understand why people didn't want you to be in a cop, Mike. It's a surprise to me.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't pass the psych.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, but I ended up trying to catch this emu,
Oh,
and this guy comes out of his property. It wasn't even a house; it was like a small little shed, and
yeah.
that whole area was already burnt down. And he comes out with a shotgun. He's like, "Get the fuck off my property!" And he was
Holy
going
shit.
back and forth. He ends up firing his shotgun,
Whoa.
and the reporter, she had her like camera out because she was going to record me like trying to catch the emu, and it turned into a big old thing. But other exotic animals like snakes, like the rattlesnakes out here. I mean, there was nothing too crazy. We don't have crocodiles out here. I never.
Oh,
I think I think I dealt with somebody who had owned a hybrid, uh, like a German Shepherd wolf, like a
oh,
hybrid,
yeah.
and I don't even remember. I don't remember the details. I remember he was saying that the dog was becoming more and more I think it had bitten somebody like for the
Mm,
second time. So
okay.
whenever the dog bites somebody, we have to impound that dog or something like that. I forgot what it was for quarantine.
Yeah.
And it was like a hybrid wolf. And I was like, holy crap. So I've never, other than that, I mean, there was never any like pythons or
Okay.
crocodiles or alligators or anything like that. Cool like that.
All right. So you got on San Diego PD at age 30. What was your like personal life like? Were you married? Did you have kids?
So I had just when I got hired, I had just gotten married in 2015,
Okay.
and we had our first son in the beginning of 2016, and then I got hired.
Okay.
So a lot of new life changes.
Yeah.
Definitely lots of life changes going on at the time.
What did your wife think about you being a cop?
She supported it. She knew that I
Okay.
had been trying for quite a number of
Right.
years, and she supported it.
Nice. Very nice. So you get on, you're 30 years old, right? When you get on SPD?
Yes.
SDPD. Okay. Now, what are the pros and cons of getting on at 30? Because I relate to that because I was 30 years old when I got into the police academy in Milwaukee.
Yeah. So I would say life experience.
Yep.
Um, that's huge, and I think it's a all the other jobs that I had already done with whether it was animal control, working correct youth corrections, working at the Queens Medical Center, going to college, different cultures, learning learning about different cultures. Uh, it was the life experience that I had, and I my personal opinion is when you're young, no fault of your own, but when you're young, you just don't have that life experience. It's talking to the public,
Yep.
talking to people, telling them, you know, as a 21-year-old coming to your house and saying you shouldn't talk to your wife like that, or you
Exactly.
know what I mean,
Yes.
or
Yep.
you shouldn't talk to your kids like that. People are like, "Well, do you have fucking kids? Do you have a
Right.
wife?" Well,
Yep.
no, I don't have a wife or kids. Like, then don't tell me how to live my life here in my house, right? Like it's
Yep.
and it I think there's a lot to say when people bring in that life experience. It's something that no university can teach you. They can't you can't learn that at college.
Yeah, I'll piggyback that, and I agree with you 100%. 21 or 20, I think is too young to be a cop. I mean, it is a young man's game. Don't get me wrong. I'm 61 years old. There's no way I'd want to, that's too old to be pushing around a squad car. It wears on you for a variety of reasons. But the life experience that I had and what you were talking about is invaluable. Like you said, 2 o'clock in the morning, you got a husband and wife that are drunk off their ass. She calls because things are getting heated. Then you got some pimply faced kid coming to the door. It's like you said, what you're telling me how to live my life in my
Mm.
house. That's some can pull it off. I've worked with some that can pull it off, but they just don't have that meat behind it. But being 30 and going through the academy and running your ass off and doing all that is no fun when you're trying to keep up with 21-year-olds.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good. Yeah, it don't feel good at all.
So
Needless to say, I was never in the front of the line at the
yeah,
runs. I
you and me
landed
both,
right in the
brother.
middle. Yeah.
You and me both. God. Yeah, speaking of which, academy and field training, how was that for you?
So for me, it was I expected more. I expected to I had prepared myself to go into the academy, watching YouTube videos and hearing stories from other people who were cops, and they were like, dude, they're gonna smoke you. Like your entire 6 months, they are going to smoke you. That's their only job. You're not going to do anything right. So I went into that thinking with that mentality. Um, it wasn't as it was difficult. It wasn't a walk in the park, but it wasn't as difficult as I had thought it was going to be. And I had a brand new wife and I had a brand new baby at home. So I guess my priorities were different. I was like, hey, you know what? The book work and all that stuff, studying and everything, going to the range, the driving and everything. All those were new things for me.
Right.
But but my priority at the time was at home. I'm trying to still figure out what's going on at home, trying to learn how to shine my boots, iron my uniform and put the crease in my pants, right? Like that.
Yep.
That was all the other stuff. It just wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be.
Now that's not like a dormitory thing. You could go home at night, right?
Right. Yeah. We went home every day.
And it's about 6 months long, or
6 months. Yeah. So six
okay.
month regional academy. And I think it's because I had talked to people who had been who had been police officers for, at the time, like 15 years, and asked them, what do I prepare for? But I think the OGs, when you guys went to the academy, I think that's the way it was. Like they smoked the shit out of you. Like
They
it was not. I mean, it was like, hey, less book work. Let more physical work.
yeah, when I applied for Milwaukee, in very bold letters, it said, "We are a paramilitary organization. You will be required to do X, Y, and Z physically." It's like push-ups, sit-ups, lifting weights. I could do that till the cows came home. I loved working out, but the running part, I'm like, oh hell, you had to
Yeah.
run a mile and a half in under 12 minutes to get out of the academy.
Yeah.
And they gave you 3 kicks at the cat, and I thought I was gonna die, But we ran literally at first. We ran every day, and I mean, there was nothing for guys to be puking. One guy broke his leg, it just yeah, yeah. It eased up through time, and then they really eased up because they said, we don't want you going across the stage getting your badge on crutches. That was
Mhm.
like their goal, and they wanted everybody to do well. They wanted, and most people made it through. They were there to help you. They were there to encourage you. Yeah, were they screaming at you? Yes. We even had instructors that had like pads, and they'd just throw you into a wall as you were running. They were hiding like around corners, like boom, oh, you
Yeah.
weren't very aware of your environment. I'm like, I guess I wasn't, but I was there with guys that were in the Marine Corps, Army, and they're like, this isn't anything, compared to Marine Corps boot camp. And I'm like, I believe that, back then, there's no, now I guess they could have like, I don't think it's the Marines, but my son was in the Army, and you could quit if you wanted to. And I'm like, you could? I can't even like, I can't even fathom that. And I guess now they have like little signs like paddles that were like, I'm emotionally distressed, or I'm tired, and you put up your little
in the
paddle.
in the in the military, right?
Yes, and
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Also, yeah, they have like cards or something.
dude, that blows my mind. And I'm like, if you're think about it, if you're in combat or whatever, there's no card or hey, enemy, stop shooting at me, okay? I'm getting really stressed out right now. It's like, no, absolutely not. So field training, what was that like? What did that look like for you?
So field training, that's I mean it was an eye-opening experience. It was different. It wasn't like animal control. It wasn't like youth corrections or the Queens Medical Center. It was the real deal, and I had great field training officers. Um they were they were hard, but they taught me a lot. And I think that's the best type of teacher, somebody who's like patient, that's not going to cut you. They're not going to cut you any slack, and but they're there to teach you. They're there to guide you and teach you. And so my FTOs, they were great. And but it was just getting those reps in, I mean,
Yeah.
just the simple stuff like writing a citation. They're like, hurry up, man. Like, you've been writing that citation for 10 minutes. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying, like I'm trying, and familiarizing yourself with the paperwork and consensual contacts, going and talking to going up and talking to gangsters when they haven't done anything, but they're not under arrest, or you're just walking up like, hey man, what's your name? Haven't seen you around this neighborhood.
Right.
Do you live around here? Having those, that was uncomfortable for me. It was super uncomfortable for me, but it, it taught me that, like, to have that gift of gab,
Yep.
learning how to think of things on the fly, like, making conversations when you're searching somebody's car, or when you're talking to somebody, you're trying to dig for more information. Just, hey, where did you grow up? Like, trying to change the subject and then bring it back to the subject. And I learned all that stuff. So it was interesting. Phase training was absolutely tough for me, but it was fun.
Yeah, it's it's necessary, and you have to have the right people being those FTOs, because I was lucky. You know, I had two FTOs that were outstanding. They got me into all kinds of stuff, and they also taught me a lot. And like you
Right.
said, both of them had the gift of gab like there was no tomorrow. I mean, I was just shocked by how they could talk somebody down. Like I said before, the fancy word is de-escalation. That's what you hear a lot, you know, but cops have been doing it ever since there's been cops. You know, there's nothing new about this. It's no big magic pill or whatever. But people will brand it, put their own like name on it or whatever. That's fine. So
Yeah.
let's jump towards your first officer involved shooting. Can you kind of give us a background on that?
Yeah. So 8 months out of phase training, May 27th of 2018, I was involved in my first officer involved shooting, and that the call for that was a Hispanic male in the middle of the intersection running around with a knife, chasing people in vehicles, and this was around 10:30, like around 10:30 at night.
Yeah.
Um, this was on the opposite side of our division. So my partner and I, we were working all the way down in San Isidro near the border, and this was on the north side of our division. So we head over there, and everything kind of escalated pretty quick. So when we arrived on scene, Border Patrol was already on scene.
Oh,
They had
okay.
the suspect. They had the suspect at gunpoint, and the suspect was, I don't know, maybe probably less than 10 feet away from the Border Patrol agent with a
Holy
knife in
shit,
his
really?
hand. I mean, he was close. Yeah. And then
I'm
my
surprised you didn't
videos
light
are,
them up.
oh, I was surprised too. When
Yeah.
I arrived on scene, I remember saying to myself, he's gonna shoot him right now. Cause
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and the Border Patrol agent, he had his back up against these bushes
Oh,
on the
shit.
intersection. So there was nowhere for him to really go.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that BP agent decides not to shoot the suspect. Um, I don't Monday morning quarterback anybody. Like
Right.
for whatever
Absolutely.
reason, he didn't do it, and we end up firing 4 taser deployments, a total of 10 beanbag shotgun rounds.
Holy shit.
Everything was ineffective on the suspect, and there came a point where the suspect runs. I go chasing him. He runs right back into the intersection, and he has a knife in his hand. He's kind of bouncing around, and he's staring at all four San Diego PD officers that are in front of him. He's bouncing around, bouncing around. His eyes are looking at all of us, and then he kind of rushes us, and he stops and he backs up, and we don't shoot him. And he's bouncing around again. He's looking all over the place, and then boom, just locks eyes with me.
Ugh.
And I just remember feeling like the entire world, just everything just stopped. I mean, the like my breathing stopped, sound stopped. I went completely deaf. I heard absolutely nothing. And he starts running towards me. I mean, and it was slow motion. I remember he looked at me and he's just running right towards me. And I start firing. Two other officers fire. And talk about time distortion, what we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Um, my rounds. So I felt like I remember seeing my rounds going down range.
Wow.
Um, I never saw them like impact the suspect, go into him, but I remember, I remember feeling like I saw like distortions in the air as
Yeah.
the rounds like went towards him. It was just this weird distortion, this weird thing that I saw. The brass was spitting out of my gun. So every round that I shot, the brass was just slowly tumbling. I mean, I remember seeing like the every round just coming out of my gun, out of my peripheral, the smoke from my gun light just rising slowly in the air. It was just a trip. It was a trip to see that. And the suspect ends up dying, but before he died, fire gets there. They start working on him, and I'm pacing back and forth. My adrenaline is through the roof.
Oh, sure.
I'm pacing back and forth, and the suspect, he's laying on his back, and his head was tilted in my direction. His head never moved, but he was tracking me back and forth with his eyes. His eyes were
Wow.
moving back and forth, and then he just died right in front of all of us. And that was my first officer involved shooting around 10:30 at night on May 27th of 2018.
Now, what I want to bring to light is how many taser deployments were fired at this guy?
Four. So my taser deployment, I missed it, and the other three impacted the suspect. Ineffective. He tears all the barbs out of his body.
That and how many beanbag rounds hit him?
I believe 10 beanbag rounds were fired at him. I want to say the majority of them hit him. I can't remember exactly what the
Yeah,
autopsy report said, but
but
I believe
the
he got hit all over with the beanbag shotgun rounds.
the reason why I bring these things up is people and politicians, of course, are going to say, it's like, well, why didn't you use your taser? Why didn't you use a less lethal, blah blah blah? Because of that. Do you want to bet your
Mhm.
life on that? I mean, I think you guys showed amazing constraint and restraint. You know, you could have automatically went to lethal without thinking twice in that situation. But you use the force continuum. That's what they call it, and it still wound up being that, and that's what drives me bananas when you have the Monday morning quarterbacks. Well, why didn't you use his taser? Why didn't you use this? Why didn't you try talking to him or blah blah blah? And I mean, there's some people there is no talking to. There are some people you could tase till the cows come home, and nothing
Right.
is going to happen. We had a mentally ill person that was on a binge, and he had all kinds of chemicals inside of him. And every time we tased him, he giggled like Tickle Me Elmo. Every
Wow.
time, I'm like, man, this is gonna be a bad day. You
That's like
know?
a nightmare right there.
Oh yeah, he's like, Yee! Every time we tase him, and I'm just like, oh shit. Make a long story short, one broken orbital and a broken nose later, fighting with this guy who had active hepatitis, and I'm swapping blood with him. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's, so, and we talked before I started recording, and what people have to understand is the physiological effects on you with that surge of adrenaline that's going through your body. There's auditory exclusion. That's, you're saying you can't hear. It's when a squad is in a car chase and, obviously somebody bails, it never fails. The siren is on full blare. The radio is up all the way. And it's like, the radio's on? I didn't even hear it. I could barely hear it. The same thing with your handheld radio. Guys would be like, I didn't hear anything, Sarge. And I'm like, that's auditory exclusion. Then you have tunnel vision. You have time distortion. Either everything goes into slow motion or it's sped up like at 100 times speed. And, all this shit is going on. Your poor body is trying to process all this while you're going through all this. It takes such a toll on you. I mean, what happened afterwards? Physiologically and mentally, how did all that come to fruition for you?
Yeah. So I remember right after the incident, you go through the entire homicide process. The pictures are taken of you, your gun's taken
Yep.
away, everything. But I remember some of the OGs. There was three people who had been involved in officer involved shootings. One of them was my peer support officer that came that night, and everybody told me like, "Hey, whatever you do, don't drink any alcohol.
Yeah.
Give it about 2 weeks before you drink any alcohol." Number two rule is do not look at social media.
Oh,
Don't read the comments.
yep.
Don't read the newspaper. None of that is going to make you feel any better
Right.
about what happened. The third thing is you're going to feel like shit tomorrow, and it is perfectly normal. Your body just created all this dopamine, this adrenaline, all these chemicals during this critical incident. Your body needs some time to flush it out.
Right.
So, drink a lot of water, hydrate, get a good workout in, sweat it out, and you should start feeling better in a few days. But it's normal to feel like shit. So, I my shooting happened on a Saturday at 10:30 at night. I didn't get home until Sunday at 1:30 PM after my entire process was completely over. I get home, I immediately now looking back, I immediately noticed I was numb. I was in shock, but
Sure. Yeah.
the word that I call it was numb. My 2-year-old son came to give me a hug, and I kind of just I had no feeling, like
Mm.
nothing in here. And when your kids are that small, normally you feel something. You come home,
Oh,
even if you had a
absolutely.
shitty day. When they're that small, they come give you a hug,
Oh, it's
Daddy.
cute. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel something. I felt nothing. I mean, nothing, nothing, nothing. I go take a shower, and that's the adrenaline dump. I just started bawling. I mean,
Oh,
just crying my fucking heart out. I mean, and like where I'm sobbing, like
yeah.
that just that
Yep.
nonstop cry. And I go to sleep, crashed out for like 5 or 6 hours. I woke up later on that evening, and when the OGs told me that I was gonna feel like shit, that is exactly what I felt like when I woke up. Uh, my chief complaint was the headache. I had the worst headache I had ever had in my entire life, and from that day forward, I had headaches every single day. At the time, and I didn't know what it was. Um, I didn't know why I was having the headaches, why I was nauseous every single day, why I was so numb to my kids, my wife, family members, like my squad mates when they would say a joke. It was funny, but it wasn't funny in here. I knew in my brain, I knew like that was kind of funny, but it just I didn't have that emotion. It was like it damaged the emotion, that
Yeah.
was in my brain, like the whatever wire that is in charge of emotion, that was fucked.
Wow.
Right after the OIS, yeah,
And what I have seen from my experiences, there is no right or wrong way to react to this after you go through it because some cops I have had in my car like right after were bawling. Then I had other cops that were just stoic. They're just stone faced, staring straight ahead. Then I had some that were joking around, like
right,
nothing happened. So there is no right or wrong, and these emotions are going to come and go. It's kind of like the stages of grief. It doesn't go in any particular order, and they can repeat themselves. At the strangest times when you least
right,
expect it. So I
yeah,
mean that, yeah, my heart's out to you. Now, getting back to the guy that was tased multiple times and beanbagged a zillion times and all that other stuff. Why was his bag? I mean, he was obviously high on something, I imagine.
meth,
Oh, fucking meth.
yeah,
Damn.
yeah,
Wow.
meth,
Yeah, how do you reason with that? You could have an army of clinicians at your scene. Psychiatric whatever. There ain't no reasoning with that.
right, and no civilian, no civilian gets paid enough
No.
to try to de-escalate a situation with somebody is in possession with a knife. Nobody's going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I agree with you 100%. You go through this whole rigmarole. Now, did you have to give a statement right away, or did they give you a chance to go home and get some rest and kind of collect yourself first?
Yeah, so I gave my statement right away, and
Good.
uh,
Okay.
and I'm kind of glad I did it, because I got it out of the way, and that night, I mean, I remembered everything. I mean, I remembered everything so clearly. I remembered how many rounds I shot. Um, I remember saying, I was gonna go for my right when I arrived on scene, I was gonna go to my gun because the suspect was so close to that border patrol
Yeah.
agent. But there was so many other border patrol agents behind him. My
Oh,
backdrop, I didn't.
yeah.
We none of us had a clean backdrop. So we all went to less lethal, which was the taser, the beanbag. The guy that was one of the officers that was with me, he went to his beanbag, just because our backdrop was not clear. So
Right.
there was all these little details that I had remembered, and I'm glad that I gave my statement. I talked to my lawyer that day. I gave her my statement. We reviewed my body worn camera footage. She gave me the blessing to give my statement. So I just did it all that day
Wow. Yeah,
or that night.
now who investigates an officer involved shooting? Is it the homicide unit from your agency or is it an outside agency?
excuse me, back then it was San Diego PD. We investigated our own officer involved shootings.
Mm.
Today, the San Diego Sheriff's Department investigates ours, and we investigate theirs now.
Yeah, there was a law that was passed in Wisconsin and a lot of other states as well, saying that the agency where it occurred cannot investigate one of their own anymore.
Right.
And I've got mixed feelings about that, whereas, you know, you don't want any kind of like you don't want to give a defense attorneys, to say, well, obviously they're taking care of their own, blah blah blah. But, we have suburban agencies that are on a rotation, like on call. So say a Milwaukee police officer shoots and kills somebody, which is the greater majority because it's an incredibly violent city and it's a big city.
Yeah.
You're going to have suburban cops going out there to investigate. And I'm like, have you investigated a homicide ever? Some of them haven't.
Oh, right. That's a
So
that's a
that's
big deal.
it's a very big deal. But we've had positive, that was my initial thoughts on it. And I'm wrong. I most of the time, they present the facts and the DA makes the determination if it was a justifiable homicide or not.
Right.
And but I always had that feeling. It was just like, your last big crime was a garage burglary, and now you're investigating
Yeah.
this. You're making me nervous, dude. Is
My life is on the line here. Yeah.
right, exactly. But so you go through all that, you make all the statements. Now it used to be, yes, you had to do all of that right away. You had to make a statement to the DA, you had to make a statement to internal affairs. I mean, there's a two-prong investigation with this. There's a criminal investigation, and then there's going to be an internal investigation, and they're not supposed to play in each other's sandboxes. They're supposed to be completely separate, entities.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the
And
same ours as well.
okay, good. That's the way it should be. I mean, it doesn't always turn out like that, but that's the way it should be. But you're going through all this, you're decompressing a little bit. How much time did they give you away from the job, and how fast did you want to get back in the saddle?
So so we were out for 5 months, all three of us, and
Okay.
this OIS kicked up a little bit of dust in the community because um, a civilian recorded the incident from
Hmm.
their backyard on a really shaky, grainy cell phone footage.
Okay.
And that footage, I've seen it multiple times. That footage kind of shows us shooting the suspect in his back as he ran away from us. From the angle of that person in his backyard, from the distance that he was
Mm,
at, how shaky his cell phone footage was. Um, that's what it looked like. So that kicked up protests and marches, and
mm,
letters to the mayor, to the chief's office for our resignation, our termination, our prosecution.
blah, blah, blah.
So
Right.
yeah, so and again, for 8 months on the job, I'm a baby cop. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
I was afraid. I was like, I have two babies at home. I have a
Oh.
fairly new wife. I just started my career. What is happening? And I knew that I had done the right thing. I didn't understand why the department wasn't releasing our body worn camera footage to the media. It took almost 2 months for the department
Mm,
to release that footage. Uh, but the damage was already done. Once the video was released, and especially Able, which is our air support unit, they were overhead that night and they
ah,
recorded the entire incident. Their footage clearly shows the suspect taking 3 full steps in my direction when I
yeah.
began shooting. Once that video was released, everything just, I mean, the marches, all the protests, all that stuff stopped. But um, the headaches that I was having every single day, the nauseousness, the numbness every single day, uh, it the mental damage had already been done. Part of my problem was I didn't share any of that with my wife, with my peer support officer, with my sergeant. People were checking on me, but
Yeah.
what do we say? I'm
Suck it
good.
up.
I'm good. Hey, how are
Yeah.
you doing, Mike? How are you feeling? I'm fine. I'm good. I didn't tell anybody that I was having headaches. Um, I didn't hear anybody else on the department bitching about that, especially not the OGs. So I didn't say anything, and that's going to be detrimental because a few weeks later, I go to the bar, have a few beers with my squad mates, and I had a headache that day. I felt like shit, but I still went. And the alcohol that night, the first beer, was the miracle drug. It took the headache
Oh,
away. It took the nauseousness away. It took the numbness away. I felt like myself. I was energized. Well, if you have a migraine headache and you take something that takes it away immediately, you feel energized because the migraine just makes you feel like shit. You just want to
right.
sleep. Uh, it's disabling. It's like that pain in your head could be disabling for the day or for the night or whatever. And when I had that beer, the headache went away, and I felt like $1,000,000.
Wow. Now, to rewind just a little bit, people were angry, because the angles made it look like you shot this person in the back. Now, I have two thoughts on that. One is when it comes to camera angles, it's incredibly deceiving. You're only
Yes.
getting one angle. I had an instance where we had this like serial burglar. We put a GPS tracker on his vehicle, and he's just going around like picking the meat off the bones of these people's garages. And they're like, yeah, we have more than enough now. So, you know, I find him. I start doing a felony traffic stop on the guy, which means, my gun is out, the door is open, I'm using it for cover, I'm giving him commands, blah, blah, blah. My partner comes up, and there's a Channel 12 news reporter just happens to be there, and he's filming with his cell phone. I see it out of my peripheral vision. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, dude. I like, do you see what I'm doing? And he's like, oh, this is I'm a reporter. I'm like, I don't care who you are, get out. But he's filming it. And then my buddy comes to back me up, blah, blah, blah. We got the guy in custody, easy peasy. Well, that night, my partner calls me on the phone. He says, dude, check out Channel 12 right now. And I'm like, I turn on the TV, and it's like, it literally looks like he's literally running into my field of fire, but it's
Oh,
because of the angle. It
angle.
looks horrible. And I know, hell no, it wasn't even close. So, not I will talk about ICE and the stuff in Minneapolis a little bit, but please be careful with, one camera angle does not tell the entire story at all. Not even close.
Right.
And secondly, shooting somebody in the back. Well, that was from the Wild West days. It's like, you can't shoot somebody in the back. Yes, yes, you can. If they pose a
Right.
danger, you don't know if your buddies are around the corner. What about civilians? Yeah, we
Right.
didn't shoot him. We let him go. Then you went and stabbed a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have somebody running away from a police officer. They're running into an elementary school with a
oh,
gun in their hand.
exactly.
Any parent who has a kid at that school would want that person shot in the back. In my opinion,
Right,
the majority of parents would say, please shoot that guy, because then what if you don't? Hey, I didn't want to shoot that person in the back, so I let
right.
him go into that elementary school with a gun in his hand.
Yeah, it's the totality of circumstances and how you articulate, why you did what you did. And,
Right.
again, media frenzy, social media, news, politicians, blah, blah, blah. It ain't the Wild West, kids. This is real, that's but so you're having these debilitating headaches, and beer was unfortunately the miracle cure for you for said headaches and nausea too. You didn't have an appetite or anything, right?
When I was drinking, I did.
Oh, okay.
The it was amazing. I mean, and I truly say that it's amazing that naps didn't work. Tylenol, aspirin, Advil, um, um, caffeine, hydrating with what nothing worked. Nothing got rid of the head. I had headaches every single day. I woke up with a headache. I went to sleep with a headache every
Did you
single day.
did you ever go to a doctor about this?
I didn't. No,
Oh,
because I didn't want to be. I didn't want to turn that good officer involved shooting, justified
ah,
everything, into something now with, hey, this cop only has 8 months on, and now he has a headache. In my
okay.
mind, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it was the ego. I didn't hear anybody complaining about it. I just didn't hear anybody ever complaining about headaches or anything like that. I didn't want to be the first one.
sure.
So I stayed quiet and suffered.
God. So, was your drinking steady or did it increase through time?
So it started to increase through time as the critical incidents began building up. Uh, the alcohol, it was, 2, 3, 4 beers a day. Not anything crazy, but that caused issues at home because I normally didn't drink alcohol every single day.
Right.
So my wife was like, "Hey,
Hmm.
that's your second, your third, and
Yeah.
it's only one p.m. On your day off." So that caused issues at home. The irritability with the kids, the noise, screaming and yelling. My brain started to become more and more chaotic every day, which it, just life at home was starting to slowly fall apart. I didn't want to be around the kids just because they were always screaming, crying,
Yeah,
yelling.
the kids
I
doing good
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
they were kids, yeah, and I'd catch myself, I wouldn't catch myself, but my wife would, catch me, like, yelling at the kids, like, "Hey,
Mhm.
quiet," and she would step in and, "Hey, it's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. They're kids, they're just playing," but my brain wanted peace, and
Mhm.
I didn't know where to get it. The Finding peace was no longer at home.
Now,
It was
let me ask you this. I mean, after your first shooting, was there a mandate to go see a therapist, like a police psychologist or anything like that?
Yes, so we have critical incident debriefs, and that's
Yeah.
done through with a psychologist or our focus, our counseling service,
Mm.
and they told us like, hey, if you're feeling this, come and talk to us. But I never took that bait. I never took that bait, and yeah, I suffered, and that was my
Mm.
fault. That was my fault, but I just didn't take advantage of the resources that our department had at that time.
Okay. Wow. But nobody saw you. You mentioned you were 5 months inside, which is, you watch TV, it's like somebody gets into an officer involved shooting and they're off having coffee and donuts right after, and then they're back in the squad car the next day. I was like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
The movies, right?
yes. So, you're going through this, you're working during the day, obviously. Well, I don't know. You're working, you're on an inside job
Right.
and the drinking is kind of going up, you're more irritable. Did anybody notice and kind of pull you off to the side and say, "Hey, Mike, you're kind of not yourself lately," or were you just good at
Ye
hiding it?
I was good at hiding it. I was, I kind of I didn't I tried not to mention it much when I was at work. I think people knew that I was always tired,
Yeah,
but other than that, the alcohol, nobody knew that I was what I was doing when I got off of work, when I'd go and drink alcohol right after. We were put on the desk for the 5 months.
right.
So, yeah, I kept it under wraps, and I kept it quiet, and I didn't say anything. Again, I was literally suffering in silence, suffering alone.
Oh,
But people checked on me. People did
okay.
check on me. The lieutenant would check on me. My peer supporter, they would come and check on me, like, "Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's the family doing?" And we're cops. We're bullshitters, right? We're,
Yep.
oh, I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
Everything's awesome. Yeah, that's right.
Everything is great, right? We have no issues at home or at
Yeah.
work. Everything is fine.
Yeah. Now, backlash, we talked a little bit, from the media and, there's people protesting. Maybe, and sometimes, like friends and family will look at you a little differently too. Even they know it's like a justifiable shoot. Sometimes, they kind of might, in the back of their heads, they're like, wow, this guy actually did this. I mean, did you have any of that? Because I've heard of that. Thanks everyone for joining me and San Diego Police Officer Mike Martinez. We are just getting started with Mike's incredible stories of life and death situations and perseverance. Stay tuned for the exciting conclusion of this conversation next Sunday. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this one. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Cops and Writers podcast. If you haven't done so yet, could you take a minute and rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? If you have already, thank you. As always, thank you for all of your support, and, of course, let's be careful out there.